My name is Nate. I used to work as an animal control officer in a location that I'd rather keep private. Suffice it to say that I served near but outside of a major US city, and then I stayed in animal control for about 5 years. After the event that I'm about to relate to you, I switched gears and I moved into corrections because I thought that would be safer. This all happened in the fall of 2012. I remember because everybody was talking about how the world was going to end because of that Mayan calendar business. Guess we didn't all die, but that wasn't from lack of trying. Anyway, I just got off of a call where I had to deal with a particularly cantankerous Doberman who made both of our lives more difficult than they needed to be, when within 10 minutes I got another call. Someone out at the edge of one of the smaller neighborhoods I served reported seeing an alligator in a creek out behind their property. Now, again, I don't really want to divulge where I was working at this time, but it wasn't known for having alligators. I'd never gotten a call about them before, and I never heard of any other officer getting one either. So, you could imagine and perhaps empathize with the level of skepticism I responded to this call with. I replied to dispatch to show me responding and drove out to this person's property, which was pretty damn far away from any support for me. I was honestly a little nervous that it was a fake call to lure one of us out there. This does happen from time to time. Police will get a call for something weird or innocuous out in the middle of nowhere and respond, only to get ambushed. I've not known anyone that it's happened to, but I've heard the stories. I should also say that this was near a full moon, and if you worked in law enforcement at all, you know what that means. We got a bunch of weird calls that night, and I found out after the fact. Everything from UFOs to a couple who got trapped in a dumpster while trying to copulate in it. What can I say? I chose a glamorous life. But honestly, at face value, I got the easy end of things. What the hell am I going to tell somebody reporting a UFO? Be not afraid? Anyway, I drive out to this place, and it's one of those sort of richies who bought a rural house to be closer to nature, but doesn't really know what that kind of living is going to mean. The house was very modern and new, but the grass wasn't cut back far enough to the trees, and they didn't have lids on their trash cans. I fully expected to find a beaver or maybe a turtle or something, and have to explain to the resident why it's totally okay that nature is around them. And so I knock on the front door, and almost draw on this idiot, because he's holding a shotgun in one hand, and I had to yell at him to put it down. Here's a pro tip for y'all. If the cops come to your front door, for whatever reason, do not answer it holding a gun. It's unwise. Anyway, he puts it down and apologizes profusely, and I could tell that he's really scared, so I try to turn on the charm and be disarming. I ask him about why he called, and he tells me that he was out in his backyard on his deck just relaxing and drinking a beer, when he heard some splashing in the creek just behind his house. At the time, he'd ignored it, because he figured it was just a raccoon or something. Then he hears it again and again, and he's getting nervous, because it started upstream a bit, and now it's right near him. Now, this guy had no neighbors to speak of. The next house was like a quarter of a mile away, so I get why he was worried. I really do. He tells me that he went inside, first to lock up his dog, which was smart, but also to grab a flashlight to see what it was. He said that if it had been a raccoon, he was just going to stay outside, but he had thought at this point that it might be a bear, and he wanted to know. Again, I understand. And so this guy says that he stepped out into his yard, about halfway to the tree line, and shines his flashlight at where the ground dips down into the creek. He explains that he didn't want to get closer than that, because he'd already fallen into the creek before. So he shines his flashlight at the trees, but he didn't see anything. And so he waited and heard a splash really close by, and shined the light where he heard the splash. Now, I want to pause here to explain two things about this guy that made this entire call a little worrisome, and that's after the whole shotgun thing. First, he didn't make a lot of small talk, nor did he digress into a story about a bunch of shit that has nothing to do why I was there, which is pretty damn common for the record. People always just need to talk. Whatever. But my whole point is that he wasn't. That usually only happens when they feel like the danger hasn't passed, or when they have something else to hide. Either way, I took note. The other thing is, when he gave me the description of this thing, he didn't try to backpedal it. Like, for example, if someone calls in about a coyote sighting, but it's dark and it could have been a fox or a dog, they'll often say so. People are generally apologetic about making a fuss, and I, or we, the police I mean, always reassure them that it's best to call, because it is. This dude wasn't doing any of that. In fact, when he was describing it, he was clear, concise, and didn't change his words, even when I questioned him. The caller starts his description of the thing and keeps on saying that it's an alligator. He must have said it like 4 times. But what he's describing isn't like any alligator I've ever heard of. Though, I'd admit, I'd only seen one up close at the zoo. But I do have the internet and know what an alligator looks like. And what this guy is depicting ain't no alligator. He said that it had horns, red eyes, and reared up on its hind legs at him. He also said that it was at least 8 feet long, and I almost chuckled in his face, but I managed to hold my composure. So, I know that this guy didn't see an alligator, but he keeps on insisting that's what it was. It was like he was trying to convince himself that's what he saw, not me. And so I absorb all of this. I take his statement, then I walk back to my vehicle and try to figure out what the hell I'm going to do. Like I said, alligators aren't indigenous to where this was, and so there's no policy or suggested method for dealing with one. I'm also wrestling with this guy's description, which sounds more like some asshole out in the creek in some kind of costume, rather than any kind of wild animal, which is a whole other bag of stupid I didn't want to have to deal with that night. That said, it might be a lot easier than screwing around with an alligator in a remote creek in the middle of the night, so I'm kind of hoping that it's a person. I should also say this, and I don't like advertising it, but I'm kind of woo-woo. I'm into the paranormal, I read a lot of books, and I watch a lot of shows on various bizarre subjects. I don't talk about it because I'll never hear the end of it at work, if it gets out, which is dumb, but it's true. Anyway, because I am into that stuff, in the back of my mind, I'm worried about what this thing might be. And I'm almost intrigued, but I push it all aside because I have to go get a look at whatever it is first. So I head over to this guy's backyard, flashlight in hand, searching around for some sign of whatever this guy might have seen. And for the first 5 minutes, I don't see shit, and all I want to do is just kind of call bullshit right there, because that part of the creek looks deep as hell. But I need to do a thorough search. Not to mention that I'd come all that way, and for damn sure didn't want to have to come all the way back. And so I keep looking around. At about the 15-minute mark, I still haven't seen anything, and I'm about to give up when I hear a loud splash off in the water to my right. I aim the flashlight that way, but only catch a glimpse of something darting up the embankment up on the other side of the creek. I run to the end of this guy's yard and try to catch up with it to see what it is, but I could tell that it isn't a raccoon because it's way too big. I realize that if I'm gonna catch this thing, I need to stun it. So I run back to my duty vehicle and grab the CO2 tranquilizer gun and a can of bear mace, just in case. I'd usually opt for the jab stick, but I don't want to get anywhere near whatever this was. For those who don't know, it's kind of like a spear with a syringe at the end that we use to administer tranquilizers. So I get back over to the creek as fast as I can, and I'm pretty jazzed up because I actually saw the thing myself, which, even if it gets away, I can at least show this guy that he's not seeing things or overreacting. I'm not a big community outreach guy, but I try to be a servant to my fellow man. And even if I can give this dude peace of mind, that's a big win for me. Well, it would have been. So I get over to the edge of the lip over the creek, and I carefully slide down into the water. I shine my flashlight into the running stream itself, looking for shallow spots, and I find a good place to cross. I figure I'll trank this bear, or whatever it is, and get it caged or bound, and then find a way across the creek afterwards to pick it up. As I get over to the other side of the creek, there's another splash, this time coming from downstream though. I aim my flashlight that way, along with the bear mace, and again I see something clambering up the embankment on this side of the creek. But only this time, I could see it a bit more clearly, and I notice that it isn't covered in fur, but has a gray or black hide that is reflective. I grimace because I'm almost sure that this is just some nut in a weird suit. But that makes me nervous. If it was just a prowler, they'd have run right the hell away the minute the police were involved. If this was a person, then they were screwing with me, and that meant they were either crazy, high as shit, or really, really stupid. I also haven't seen a face, so I can't rule out an animal of some kind. So, I'm stuck here, because I can't use either of my non-lethal options until and unless I make positive ID on this. Whatever. You see, I can't legally use the trank on a human, because it might kill them, and I can't use the bear mace on a human. I also can't use my taser on the bear, largely because it often doesn't work, and I'd rather not get mauled to death in the woods. And so, with a lot of frustration, I climb up the embankment with one hand, and I realize this place is way further into the wild than I initially thought. I'm absolutely surrounded by trees, and I can't see shit beyond them. I shine the flashlight over towards where I suspected the thing climbed out of the water, and I see it scramble up a couple of trees near there, and so I follow. The grass on this side is really high, and I'm worried about snakes and falling on needles or whatever the hell else is out here, but I keep going, because again, I'm still not sure what I'm pursuing, and what a large animal like this could have been is a worry and danger. If it's human, I have to run them down, because that's A, a crime, trespassing and prowling, and B, and this is really more important, it's an open threat to the homeowner. And I don't know what this person might be up to, but it's nothing good. Now, I think that a lot of people don't really comprehend the reality of being a law enforcement officer, because if a crime has been, is being, or might be committed, we literally can't turn away. It's the police's obligation to engage. If we run, we're done. We can even sometimes be charged ourselves if someone gets hurt, when we should have intervened, so I don't really have the option to let him run off. I move as fast as I dare to given the terrain, and when I get to where I saw this thing going, I freeze, because I get a good look at a part of it for the first time, and smirk when I see what looks like the calf of a human leg going behind a tree. "Gotcha!" I shout through the trees at whoever this is, identifying myself as law enforcement and demanding that they make themselves known. But I get no response. I grit my teeth because I'm pissed that this asshole is going to make me chase him and book it through the trees after him. I'm blazing around in this timber for something like 20 goddamn minutes, shouting for him to stop, and kind of getting lost. I'm breathing heavy as shit because I'm carrying the trank gun, which I can't at this point leave behind, because this dipshit might pick it up and use it on me. And screw that. I rounded a copse of trees that I'm sure I saw a minute ago, and I spot something I hadn't the first time. A path. Right there, in the middle of the damn woods, connected to nothing and nowhere, is what looks like a hiking trail of some sorts. Now, I know all the trails in my jurisdiction, and this path isn't one of them, but it's probably where this guy has decided to run, and will more than likely lead me to some abandoned building where he's hiding out. Oh joy. And so I say screw it, you know? I kneel down, and I open the case for the trank gun, and I tuck the bear mace inside of it, because I'm sure I won't need that now. I then close it all up again and strap it tight to my back, and so I'm lugging it. Then I draw my duty weapon and follow the path, the flashlight pointing forward. But I don't make it far before I notice these fresh tracks. I get pretty excited, but then suddenly stop dead in my own, when I notice that they look weird as shit. I was expecting hiking boots or sneakers, or maybe even bare feet. But what I saw looked more like human handprints, but like with claws. There weren't any fingerprints or even definition, but the general shape and print and the gouge of sharp talons. I was flabbergasted and wondered for just a second if it was an alligator, like the homeowner said. So, I take a deep breath and I keep following the tracks, which oddly follow the path obviously. This is somewhat unusual behavior for most animals, at least for hiking paths, which this seemed to be. They follow game trails, sure, but those aren't anywhere near as defined as this, and wild animals tend to avoid people, generally speaking. Now I'm walking down this path for a good quarter of a mile or so when I spot something at the end of it, which, shit, just thinking about it now makes my hairs stand on end. About 10 or 15 yards in front of me is what looks like a house or a cabin, but it's built right into the side of this huge hill. It looks a bit like a mine entrance or something, but I've seen those, and this wasn't that. The door to the structure is closed, and there's no light coming out of this building at all. But there's the plate and the latch for a padlock on the outside. I could see an old Western-style lantern hanging off of a hook just next to the door itself, and I could hear a low breeze coming out of it as well. There aren't any windows or other openings at all, and the whole structure is only about 8 by 8 foot. At least on the outside. I blow out another deep breath and pause to call for backup. I know no one's going to get here anytime soon, but it's a procedure in situations like this to call in for help, and I don't get dinged if there's an incident. Once I hear that backup is en route, I move over to the door, sweeping every direction around me as I go, just in case this guy led me here to get the drop on me. When I get to the door, I flip open the plate and then push the door wide open. A foul, reeking stench of death comes out of this door, and I almost vomit right there, but keep my light up and pointed forward because I have no idea what's inside. My light reveals a narrow, machine-dug tunnel or hallway built into the side of this hill, as I sort of suspected. It's like a mine, and shit, maybe it used to be. But there's no record of a mine out here. I'd know. What's more, outside of this shack door entrance, it all looks modern and is all shored up by new-looking steel girders rather than old wooden ones. The tunnel goes back for about 20 feet and then takes a sharp left turn into the hill. Now, remember what I said earlier about not being allowed to turn away? Yeah. I turn around and pull out my bite stick. That's a baton, but for dogs to sort of chew on. And I slip the narrowest part of it through the ring for the padlock plate, and then I snap it off. I'm not sure if this guy is behind me, but I don't want to get trapped inside of whatever this structure is. Once that's done, I turn back around, I draw my weapon again, and move down the tunnel slowly. I ease around the corner, and I almost puke again because the smell is just awful. After the turn, the corridor continues for about 10 feet, and then descends into a flight of stairs. I'm kind of in a oh shit mode about now, and I wonder if I shouldn't just double back and wait for backup. But at this point, I know that if I do, I'm going to lose this guy, and I'm reasonably sure I'm going to find some bodies in there. So I go down the stairs, picking my way carefully, and keeping an eye out for tripwires or other traps. When the stairs level out, I realize that there's kind of a lot of room to move down here, which is surprising because I always thought that mines were cramped. And that's when I see them all scattered on the damn floor. Bones. Hundreds, maybe even thousands of bones. Mostly animal, but I spot a skull amongst the pile, and freak right the hell out. It's an impossible amount of remains, and they just cover the whole floor. As I'm processing all of what's in front of me, a huge black shadow rises up over the sea of bones on the far right side of the room. I shine my flashlight on it. I still can't believe it. It wasn't an alligator. It wasn't a guy in a costume. And it wasn't any other animal I've seen in my whole life, which included 5 years on animal control up to that point. It was covered in scales of black and green, and it was absolutely enormous, way closer to 9 feet than to 10. The thing I remember the most about its appearance, at least, was its eyes. They burned with a bright hot redness that shot right inside of me when I made eye contact. I swear I thought what I was looking at was a demon in the flesh, and I absolutely felt my knees buckling. Then came the moment that changed my life forever. Because it stepped closer, and I could see that its snout was close, and its features fluid as they contorted into a snarl. Then it spoke. "Have you come to feed me, slave?" That's what it said to me. This thing uttered a sentence that still occupies a huge part of my psyche, just from the implications of it alone. I wanted to ask what it meant by that. Hell, I wanted to roar at it that I was no one's fucking slave. I wanted to know what it was, who it was, and who all these people were. But then it jerked, as though to move towards me. Now I will state flatly, and for the record, that I am no marksman. I could hit a target 20 or perhaps 30 feet. I could do my job, but a sharpshooter I am not. I am, however, exceptionally fast at drawing and aiming my sidearm, and I am known amongst my colleagues for this. I drew, I aimed, and I fired 4 times. I did this on reflex. My training kicked in. The shots blasted through the chamber and practically deafened me, but they hit their target, which wasn't hard because, again, this thing was enormous. Even before the resounding roar of my firing had stopped, even before I heard the horrible roar rise up out of the chamber, even before I realized what the hell I was doing, I was running up those steps. I ran all the way back up and out the door to the structure, and I slammed it shut behind me, regretting breaking the lock plate. I slipped my bite stick through the eye for the padlock, hoping it would hold, and tore ass down the path where I'd come from. I didn't get more than 100 paces from the door when the roar followed me out, and I heard the crash of the door blasting off its hinges. I just kept running, and this time I was very cognizant of my actions, because if 4 direct shots from a Glock just piss it off, then what the hell else am I gonna do? Use harsh language at it? I ran my ass off, and I knew that it was behind me most of the way back, but it seemed to break off. I don't think it was particularly fast, which I'm sure has saved my life. Now let me tell you, when I got to the end of that path, and I saw all of that beautiful red and blue coating running across the creek near the caller's house, I almost cried. I ran straight for those lights and didn't stop until I was basking in their glow and surrounded by a lot of other guns. I didn't say a thing about whatever the hell that thing was in the tunnel. My report states flatly that the assailant was an adult male wearing a lizard costume and a ghillie suit. We searched for it, and I secretly hoped that someone would find it, but I also didn't actually want any of my fellow officers to get hurt by it. We found nothing, though, no sign of whatever it was. But that tunnel was another matter entirely. It was a mine, but it wasn't on any maps or rosters that I'd ever seen. The remains were from as far back as the early 1920s, but most of them were animal bones. The complex of the mine was filled with them, though, and it went off in 4 directions, each of which ended in another room filled with bones. Now I want to say that I did not investigate this case further, as frankly I didn't want another thing to do with it. The official story was that it was a long-dead serial killer who had a copycat, and that the location was a mine from the turn of time of the earliest remains, which were probably miners themselves. It was all bullshit, though. Those supports were almost brand new and shored up with concrete. If the mine was that old, somebody did some recent renovations. The whole case got buried, and if I'm being honest here, I'm glad. I don't ever want to see that thing again. But something in the back of my mind tells me that I will.